Okay guys, so welcome back again. So in this video, let's make this to-do application. So as we can see that this is a very simple to-do application, but the whole point of making this video is two things. That is, firstly, we'll be seeing that how do we actually use local storage inside a React application, and how do we use Chakra UI, that is a component library which we can use inside React applications. So if we look at the application right now, as of now, we see that we simply have a heading here with a gradient background. Then we have some to-do items in our list here, as we can see. And then if we want, we can add to-dos here. So we can add to-do. So it's a traditional application like this. And if we want, we can delete the to-do from here. And if we want, we can delete all the to-dos. And then we'll be seeing something else, that is no to-dos left. And if we want to add an empty to do, then we'll get a beautiful toast here that says no content, so we cannot add a to do, and this toast will automatically hide itself after 5 seconds. And now what more we can do with Chakra UI inside our application is this, that we can enable the dark mode functionality very easily as compared to traditional applications. So if we simply click this icon here, that is sun here. So if we click this icon here, we see that our application is dark mode compatible and all the colors have been adjusted according to the dark mode. So if we want, we can add to-dos here and it looks something like this. And if we want, we can delete it. So that is what we are going to currently build inside this application. So without wasting any time, let's jump into our application. So now if we go to our application here on different port, so we see that currently we only have an H1 here that says to do application. And if we look at the code, we see that our app component only renders this H1 which says to do application. So now the first part for this application would be to add the Chakra UI dependency. So what we can do, we can go to the site here, that is chakra-ui.com, and then we can click on this get started tab. And then we see that the installation is pretty simple. So we simply need to copy these dependencies here. And now let me simply copy it from here and let's go back to our application. And now let me simply paste it here inside the terminal and let's simply press enter here. So it would take a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to install the Chakra UI dependency, and then we'll see that how do we integrate it with our React application. So now the dependency has been installed. So now the first thing we need to go is that we need to go to the index.js file, and here we need to import something that is called Chakra provider. So we'll say import something from @Chakra UI React like this, and then we need to import Chakra provider from this. So we'll say Chakra provider. And then what we need to do, we need to wrap our app component inside this Chakra provider component. So that will enable Chakra UI inside our application. So we'll do it like this, and then we'll enclose this app inside this Chakra provider. So now let's go to our app.js file, and here currently we see that we have a to-do application. So now let's see that how do we display the heading here, that is the to-do application here. Like in the completed application, we see that we have a to-do application. So since this is a heading, so what we can do, we can directly extract heading from the Chakra UI thing here. So we'll say import something again from where we want to import it from Chakra UI React. And what we want to import, we want to import the heading component from Chakra UI. And now instead of returning this div here, what I want to return, I simply want to return this heading here like this, and this heading would say to do application like this. So now if we save this application and if we run our application by doing npm start like this, and now let me minimize this window here. And now let's go back to our application. So it will reload and we'll see a heading that says to do application. So it might take a couple of seconds to reload, I suppose. And now you might be wondering that how I know that this is a heading component that is exported from Chakra UI. So what you can do, you can go to chakraui.com, and then if you scroll down here on the sidebar here, then we'll see that we have some layout components here. That are these layout components. We have the form components here, and then we have the data display components. So we'll be using this batch thing here. And now if we scroll down, we see that we have a typography component and one is the heading component. And this is basically used for displaying headings inside your application. So that's what we are doing. That is where firstly we are importing this heading component, and we are using that heading component to display our heading inside our application. So now let's go back to our application. So we see that our heading is displayed according to Chakra UI. So if we go back to our application, we see that our application is layered into a vertical stack. So if we see that the first line of the application, we see that we have an icon here which is the first row of the vertical stack. Then in the second row, we have this to do application heading. And then we have this list here that is again in itself a vertical stack. And then we have this form component. So what I would like to do is that I would like to create this component as a to-do list component, that is our own component, and then this component as a add to do component. So let's create those two components first, and then we'll work upon the UI. So let's go back here, and inside the source folder, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new folder that is called components, like this. And inside this components folder, I'm going to create a file that is to-do list.js, and the second component would be add to-do.js, simply like this. So now let's quickly scaffold the components here by doing RFCE, and this RFCE comes from the ES7 React Redux extensions. These extensions I'm talking about, that is inside VS Code, that is ES7 Redux extension, and it simply provides snippets to create these functional components here. So now let me save this to-do list, and let me quickly also do it inside add to-do.js by doing RFCE to create a functional component, and then export that as a default here. So now we have an add to-do component. So now let's go to the add to-do list component, and now we want to import this component inside our app.js file. So let's import this component here. So import, we need to go inside the components folder and then the to-do list component, and now we need to require this thing here, that is import to-do list from to-do list. And now what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to copy it here and let me paste it here, and now I'm simply importing add to do here. So let me copy it and let me simply paste it here. So now we have these two components here. Now let's again go back to this application. So we see here that here we have a vertical stack. So what we want to do, we want to wrap each and everything inside a vertical stack, and this vertical stack is again provided by this Chakra UI component here, that is this vertical stack component, that is a layout component, I suppose. So this thing is this thing here. So inside this stack thing, we have this vertical stack thing. So let's import this vertical stack from Chakra UI React. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply import something from at Chakra UI React like this, and here it should be vstack. And now what I want to do, I want to wrap each and every component inside my app component inside a vertical stack. So instead of returning the heading here, what I want to return, I want to simply return a vstack. And now this heading should be inside this vstack like this, and this should be like this. Now it should be fine like this. So if we go back, we see one more thing inside our application, that our heading is centered automatically because almost all the components of Chakra UI uses Flexbox as their basis. Though you do not have to do anything inside Flexbox, that is writing your own custom CSS, but you can pass those Flexbox properties as props to your components. So we see that we have a vstack, but we want to have a button here that looks like an icon here. So for that, what I want to import, I want to import an icon button here. So if we see here, or if we scroll down here on the Chakra UI page, we see that we have an icon button here. So let me copy this from here and let's go back, or let me simply import it like this here. That is, I want to include an icon button here like this. And now these icons, what you're seeing here, that is this icon, this is a font awesome icon. So for that, what I'm going to use, I'm going to use another beautiful library that is for icons, and that is called React Icons. So let me stop my application and let me also include that library that is called React Icons. So npmi React Icons. So this React Icons library contains basically almost all the icons from all the resources, I suppose. So let me search for React Icons. So we see that this React Icon library contains all the icons from these providers, that is and design icons. Then we can use bootstrap icons, then we can use the font awesome icons, then we can also use material design icons, and there are so many icons which you can use inside your application. But we are interested in using this font awesome icons. So this icons we are interested in using. So let's go back here. And now here, the first part of this vstack should be the icon here, as we can see in the completed application. So this is an icon here. So let's provide in an icon component here, that is icon button like this. And this icon button takes an icon as a prop here. And now how do we provide the icon here? So we can get the icon from the icon library that we just installed. So we can say import something from React icons, and then we need to go inside the far folder. That is, we want to use the font awesome icon, and here I simply want to import the far sun icon like this, and we may also include the far moon icon for the dark mode, which we are going to include later on, but we are just importing the far moon icon. So we can provide in this far sun icon as an icon here by providing it as a component here, that is far sun like this. So if we save this and if we go back and if we have a look at this application, or we need to start the application here by doing npm start. So now if we go back and let's wait for a couple of seconds. So we see that we have an icon here that looks like a so we see here that we have an icon here on which we can click, but this icon is not rounded, and in the completed application we see that the icon is rounded. So how to make it rounded? It is super simple to do. We simply need to pass in one prop, that is round equal to true, or let me provide it like this, that is round equal to true. And if we go here, we see that the icon is rounded here. But again, if we look at the completed application, we see that we have some breathing space around the icon here. So which means that our vertical stack has a padding all around here. So what we can do, we can go to our application here, and inside the V stack, we can provide in a padding here. So we can provide in a padding here of 4. And basically whatever number you write from 0 to 64, you can think of that number is that if you are providing 1 here, which means a padding of 4 pixels. So if we are providing here 4, which means a padding of 16 pixels. So if you are providing here 10, then the padding would be 40 pixels. So now if we save this and if we go back, we see that we have a padding here or some breathing space here. And now let me again go back here, and we have some more props that should be passed to this icon button, but we'll be doing that later on when we are implementing the dark mode, that is handling the on click event and other things. But for now, let me do one more thing here, that is I want the size of this icon button to be large. So let's provide in a size, and that should be LG. So here you can provide small, medium, large, XL. I am providing an LG here, and you can read all about these props in the Chakra UI documentation. And I want to provide here one more thing, and that is to align this button to the end of the vertical stack, that is to this place here. So what we can do, we can simply provide in a value here, that is align self. And we see that this is a flexbox property, that is align self to the end of the parent. So we can say it should be like this, that is flex end like this. So if we save this, we go back, we see that our icon is aligned to the right side of our application. And now if we have a look at the to-do application thing here, we see that this looks bolder and it has some background gradient. So how do we provide that? So let's do that also firstly. So let's go back here. Let me provide in some margin here. So margin bottom. So we see that this margin bottom, that is MB, comes from the Bootstrap thing, because initially they have this thing here that is to provide the margin like this as a class, but here we have it as a prop. So we can provide in margin bottom as 8, which means 8 into 4, that is 32 pixels. And then we want the font weight to be something. So we can provide in font weight using these values. So here I am simply providing an extra bold here. And then I want to change the size of this heading. So we can change the size equal to 2XL, and we can provide it like this. And again, for these properties, you can have a look at the Chakra UI documentation. I am again and again insisting, because there are so many things which you can customize for each and every component. So let it be like this. So if we go back, we see that our heading looks like the same thing here. So why not let's provide a gradient also here. I was thinking of providing it later on, but let me provide it here because it's super simple to do. So we can provide in a background gradient here. So background BG gradient equal to something, and that something should be a linear gradient. And then this linear gradient should go towards right. So we can say to right. And in Chakra UI, there's a short form, that is we can simply provide in, instead of to right, to -r. And again, this again comes from the Chakra UI docs. And for the colors, I can simply provide in pink.500, and then again pink.300, and then lastly would be blue.500. So you might be wondering that where these colors are coming from, that is how I'm providing these colors, that is pink.500, pink.300 and blue.500. So if we go back to this Chakra UI docs, and if we go to the docs here, and if we'll have a look at the default theme, we see that we have these colors that are provided by Chakra UI. And basically Chakra UI uses all the elements of Tailwind CSS. So we see that all the colors are inspired by Tailwind CSS. So here I am taking this color, that is this pink color, and then we are providing in a value of this this strength, that is the 500 strength, and the color would be this. So to use the pink color with this 500 strength or this color, we can provide in pink.500, and it will basically provide us with the color with this hex code, that is this color. So I'm using this color and then this color, and then for the blue one I am using this color. So now let's go back to our application, and we see that inside our heading we do not get the gradient inside the text. So for that we need to use one CSS property, and that is called background clip. So we can simply provide it here, that is bg clip should be equal to text. And as you know that these are all CSS property which we can pass in as props inside these components here. So if we save this and if we go back, we see that we have this to do application here. So our two things are complete. So now let's see that how do we make this this vertical stack which contains the actual to-dos. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my to-do list component here, and instead of returning a div, what I want to return here, I simply want to return here a vertical stack again. So let me import the vertical stack here. So import, we need to import it from Chakra UI React. Then what we need to import the V stack, and we need to import a couple of more things, but firstly let's simply import the V stacks, and we can simply return the V stack here. So this is it. And now to render the to-do list, what we need to have the actual to-dos inside an array here. So let me paste in an array here which contains sample to-dos, in which each and every to-do has an ID, and then we have a body for each to-do. And now to display this to-dos inside this vertical stack, what we can do, we can use the JSX, that is to-dos.map, like this, and then we have the individual to-do, and then we want to return something, so we can directly return something that is called an H stack, and this again comes from Chakra UI. So as soon as I use this H stack, it has been automatically imported here from Chakra UI React. And again for horizontal stack or the H stack, we can go to the stack thing here, and you can have a look at the documentation, and it is a simple horizontal stack. Currently we were using the vertical stack, and a horizontal stack stacks the elements side by side. So that's what I'm going to do, because inside our completed application we can see that each of the to-do is a horizontal stack. Firstly we have the content here, and then we have the button here to delete the to-do. So this is a horizontal stack. So let's go back. And now inside this horizontal stack, the first component we want is the text component to display the to-do. So we can again import the text component from Chakra UI React, and then we also want the icon button, because we are using the delete icon here. So we can say icon button here. So let me use it here, that is inside the horizontal stack. Let me display the text, and the text would be to-do.body, like this. And then we want to have a button here, and that is an icon button, like this. And now to display the icon button, we want to have an icon here. So let me grab the icon from the React icon library. So we can say import from React icons /far for the font awesome icons. And then what we need to import, we need to import the far trash icon, like this. And now we can pass this far trash as a component here inside this icon button. So this is a prop here which takes in a component here, and that component is far trash, like this. So if we save this, we go back, we see that we cannot see anything, because, and why is that so? We cannot see anything, or we haven't imported this to-do list inside our app.js. Oh yes, we haven't imported this to-do list inside our app.js. So we have imported a to-do list, but we haven't displayed the to-do list here as a component here. So now the second component would be the to-do list here. After the heading, we have the to-do list here, and then let me also add this add to-do thing here. So now let me save this, and if we go back, we see that we are getting these things here. So what we want this icon to be rounded, so we can do it very easily. And then we also want some space between these two things here. So let's go back. So let's make our icon rounded first. So icon button, it should be rounded. So it should say is round. it should not be inside this JSX, it should be here, that is round should be equal to true, like this. And then we also need to handle the on click event on this icon, that we would be doing it later on. And now since this is a element inside a list inside our React application, so each of the horizontal stacks should have a unique ID. So let me provide in an ID here, that is the key here, not the ID. So this should be todo.id, like this. And then let's style this vertical stack here, that is this vertical stack, which is this thing here. So we see that it has a border and it has a divider also between each of the to-dos. So let's do that. So let me provide in a divider first. So to provide a divider to the vertical stack, it is super simple. So we can simply provide divider as a prop here, and inside here we can simply provide in stack divider. And this again comes from Chakra UI. That is, this stack divider is imported from Chakra UI. So if we save this, we go back, we can see that we have a divider between these two to-dos. We can see that, see this. And now we also want to have a border to this vertical stack. So let me also provide in a border color. So border color would be something, and that something should be gray.100. And again, this comes from the default color palette that is included in Chakra UI. Then we want a border width. So we can provide in a border width that is equal to 2 pixels. And then we also want to have a padding to this vertical stack. So we can say padding should be equal to 4, like this. And then if we save this, we go back, we see that we have a vertical stack with this border, but we want a corner radius here. So we can easily provide in a corner radius here. So we can say border radius should be equal to something. And here we can provide in some values that ranges from small, medium, large, XL. And I'm going to provide here LG, that is large. And if we go back, we see that we have a rounded border. And now we see that our vertical stack is only in the middle and it is not taking the full width of the parent vertical stack. So what we can do, we can go back to our vertical stack here and we can provide in a width property here. So either we can provide in width here, that is explicitly width like this, that is 100%. Or what we can do, we can simply use W here. And that is a shorthand provided by Chakra UI. So let's save this. We see that we have this thing here. And now as we can see that this is taking the full width of the parent, that is this complete vertical stack. So what we want that on larger devices, I want this width to be only say 50% of the viewport width. So how can we provide that? So we can provide in responsive classes also here. So inside this vstack, we can provide in a max width property, that is max W equal to base, that is on mobile devices we can provide in 90 VW, that is 90 viewport width. Then for smaller devices we can provide in some width that is 80 viewport width. And then for larger devices we can provide in a width that says 50 VW. And then for XL devices, that is say HD screens or full HD screens, we can provide in a width that is 40 VW. So if we save this and if we go back, we see that now our vertical stack has a width that is this width. So if we right click here and if we inspect here and if we simply scroll this thing here, or if we simply move this thing here, we see that our width is changing out accordingly. And now we are on a smaller width and we see that it takes 90% of the viewport width. And if we scroll up and up and up, so finally it would take 40 viewport width. So now let me close this thing from here. So let me close it. So this should be this thing here, that is 125% right now. And now we see that this text and this icon button is in the middle. So what we want to have a spacing between them. So let me provide in a spacer between them. So let's go back. And between this text and this icon button, I want to provide in a spacer. So we can simply provide in a spacer like this, and it will take all of the space between these two components, that is this text component and this icon button. And again, this spacer comes from Chakra UI and it has been automatically imported. So now if we go back, so again we see that the spacing has not been included here. And why is it so? Because the H stack is only taking the minimum space needed for it. And now to make this horizontal stack take all the space that is inside the vertical stack, what we can do, we can provide in a flex property inside our vertical stack, and that is align items stretch. So we can say align items equal to stretch like this. So if we save this, we see that our text is here and our button is here, as we can see. So now let's go and let's style this thing here. That is this add to do form. That is this super simple form. So for this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my add to do component here. That is currently an empty component. And again here, what I want to do, I simply want to return something here. And what I want to return, I simply want to return a form here like this. And then to handle the form, we should have a handle submit function here inside this functional component. So function handle submit like this, and we would be handling the submitting later on, but let me provide it here. And it takes in an event here, and here on the form we can say on submit equal to handle submit like this. And now inside this form, if we see at the completed application, we again see that this is a horizontal stack. We have the input component here and we have the submit button here of the form. So let's go back. So now to provide in an input component, firstly we need to wrap it inside the horizontal stack. So we can say h stack like this, and this h stack has been automatically imported from Chakra UI. And now inside this h stack, we want to have an input component that is again a Chakra UI component, simply like this. And then we want to, let me import this input component here from Chakra UI. So the error is gone. And now we also want to have a button here. So let me provide in a button here. And this again comes from Chakra UI, and this is add to do, simply like this. And this button has been automatically imported here. So now if we go to our application here, we see that we have this input field here and this add to do button here. But this add to do button is not colored as this thing here, that is not in pink color. And it also doesn't have padding as much as this button has, as we can see here. And this input field should also be styled as this input field, that is the filled input field. So what we can do, we can go back to our application, and here for the input field, we can provide in a variant here like this. And here we can simply provide in filled here. So this input field can take a couple of variants here. So if we go to the Chakra UI docs, and if we have a look at the forms thing here, and if we click on the input field, we see that we have these kind of input fields. That is the outline input field, that is the default input field, and then we have the fill thing here, then we have the flush thing here, and then this is the unstyled input field. So we are using this fill thing here. So that is all for the input field. And we can also provide in a placeholder value. So we can say placeholder should be equal to something, and we can say learning Chakra UI with to do app like this. And now for the button, we can provide in a color scheme here. So for the color scheme, I can simply provide in pink here, and here we do not provide in values in dot notations, that is pink.100, pink.50 or something like that. We simply provide in the actual color here, that is the actual color group. So if we go here, that is the default theme here, we see that each of these colors is a color group. So this is a gray color group, this is a red color group, this is an orange color group, and so on and so forth. So we are interested in pink color, so we are providing in pink here. And then one more property we need to provide here, and that is the padding on the x axis. So we can simply say px equal to something, and here I'm providing in 8. That means 8 times 4, that is 32 pixels. And then the button needs to have a type, and that is a type of button. And here we want this to be a submit button, which submits this form here. So now let me save this, and if you go back to our application, this input field is styled as this one here. And now we need to have some margin at the top here. So what we can do, we can go here to this h stack, and here we can provide an empty equal to something, and that something is 8 like this. That is 8 times 4, that is 32 pixels. So we have a padding here, and if we see that our UI looks almost complete. So now let's start working upon the to-do application itself. And if we need to do anything more inside the UI, we'll do it later on. So let's start with the to-do application itself. So let's go to the to-do list, and firstly what I want to pass this to-dos as a prop here to this to-do list. So let me cut this out from here, that is from this to-do list component, and let me paste this to-do list inside this app component. So this app component would be containing the state of to-dos. So let me pass this to-dos as a prop to do our to-do list here. So we can say to-dos equal to to-dos like this. And now inside our to-do list, we can extract that prop like this, to-dos. And if we save this, everything should be looking same as before. So now let's create a state of this to-dos inside this applications, because currently this is a constant value, but we want to have a state of to-dos inside our application. So what we can do, we can use the use state hook from React. So what we can do, we can say import something from React like this, and here we need to import use state like this, and let me import use effect also, because eventually we are going to use that also. So use effect. And now here inside this app component, I'm going to use a state here. Let me use this thing here, that is an auto completion here, and the state value would be to-dos, set to-dos, and the initial state would be initial to-dos like this. And now let me change this to-dos here to be this initial to-dos. So now if we save this, everything should work fine as it was before. So we see that our application is rendered, which means there is no problem inside our application. So let's go back. And now what I want to do, the easy thing here is that I want to see that if I'm able to delete a to-do by clicking this button here. So to do that, what I need to do, I need to create a function here inside this app component, and we need to pass that function as a prop to our to-do list component, because to-do list contains the button to delete an individual to-do, that is this icon button. So let's go inside this app.js file, and here after initializing the state here, what we can do, we can create a function here that is delete to do like this, and this takes in an ID of the to do to delete, and then we can delete the to dos. So now what we can do here, we can create a new array of this to dos. We can say const new to dos, and I'm being explicit here by creating a new array of to dos, though we can directly use the set to dos method, but here I am being explicit so that it is more understandable. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply say to dos dot filter, because I am filtering the to dos here, and here we have an individual to do, and then what I want to return here, I want to return here true or false, depending on whether I want to keep the to do or whether I want to delete the to do. So here I can say return to do dot id should not equal to id, that is, if the IDs match, then we are not going to return that to do. So that's all what I'm going to do here. And then finally what I need to do, I need to set the to-dos, and here we need to pass in new to-dos array like this, simply like this. And now we need to call this delete to-do function from our to-do list. So firstly we need to pass it as a prop here. So we can say delete to-do should be equal to delete to-do like this. And now we can extract this delete to-do as a prop inside our to-do list. So we can extract that here like this, and now we can use the icon buttons on click event to call this delete to do function here. So we can say on click should be equal to something, and here what we can do, we can pass in an arrow function here that is delete to do. So why it is not auto completing? So it is delete to do, and here we can pass in the ID of the to do. So to do dot id like this. So let's save this and let's go back and let's see that if I can delete the to do here. So if I click here, we see that we are able to delete the to do, and if we click here, we are able to delete the to do. But now as we see that we are seeing this empty vertical stack here without any to dos. But instead what we want to have here, we want to have something like this here. That is, if we delete all the to dos, we see that we have a badge here. So let's display that badge when there is an empty list of to dos. So that is again super simple to do. We need to go inside our to-do list component, and here before returning this vertical stack, what we need to do, firstly we need to check something, that is if not to-dos dot length, that is if the to-dos length is 0 or less than 0, though it cannot be less than 0. But if it is not greater than 0, then what we want to return? We want to return some other component instead of this vertical stack component. We want to return here a badge here. So badge like this. And here we can provide in some value here, that is no to-dos like this. And now we need to import this badge component from Chakra UI. So we can import it like this. And if we go here, if we have a look at the documentation, and if we scroll down, we can see that in the data display thing, we see that we have a badge here, and a badge looks like this thing here. Though you can go and read the documentation, but here I am simply going to use it, and we are going to use this success badge here. So we can provide in a color scheme that is green. So let's go here And inside this badge, we can simply provide in a color scheme that should be equal to something. And here I'm providing green, and I also want to provide in some padding here. So for the padding, we can simply use P, and for the margin, we can simply use M, and like this. And then if we save this, we can go back to our application and we see that we are getting this thing here, but we are not getting any border radius. So let's provide in a border radius. So we can say border radius should be equal to LG, that is the large border radius. Now we see that we have this thing here, but now if we click here, we are not able to add the to-dos. So how do we add the to-do? Let's go back. It is super simple to do. Let's go to our app.js, and here to add a to-do, let me create a function here which would be passed as a prop to this add to-do component. So let me create a function here. So function add to-do like this, and then this add to-do takes in a to-do from the add to-do component as a parameter. And here inside this add to do, what we need to do, we simply need to call set to do's. So set to do, and here what we can do, we can use the spread operator to spread the previous array of to do's, that is the state of to do's, and then we can add our to do by simply providing in to do here. And this to do would come from this add to do.js component. But firstly, we need to provide this add to do as a prop to our add to do component. So let me copy it from here, and let's go here, that is add to do, and here we can simply say add to do should be equal to this function, that is add to do. And now we can extract this function here inside the add to do thing here. So here we can simply extract it here like this, that is add to do like this. And now once someone would click on the form, we can simply make a log statement here, that is console.log, that is 1, 2, 3. So if we save this, we go back, and if we reload the page and if we submit the form, we see that the page is reloaded, and it is because we are not preventing the default behavior of the form. So we need to do e.prevent default like this. And if we save this, if we go back, if we submit the form, we see that the page is not reloaded. And if we open our console here, let me open my console here, we see that we are getting 1, 2, 3 as we are submitting the form. So now let's handle the submitting of the form. So now we want to have this input field as a controlled input field. So let's go back. So we need to have some kind of state for this input field. So we can say, so we need to use a state in this thing here. So we need to import use state from React. So we need to use state from React, and then we need to use that state. So use state like this. And here we can say content of the input field, set content, and the initial state would be an empty string here like this. So now inside this input field, it should have the value. So value should be equal to something, and that something should be this content like this. Let me minimize this terminal window here, and let me also minimize this sidebar here. And then we have an on change event on this thing here. So on change equal to something, and that something should be equal to set content like this, and the content would be e.target.value, and this event comes inside this thing here like this. So if we save this, we see we have a controlled input here. So now instead of logging in that 1, 2, 3 here, what we can log, we can simply log the value of this content here. So we can log it content here. So let's go back. So we see that why we have a problem here. So the problem is gone. So if we type something here, if we click on add to do, we see that we are getting this thing here, which is inside this input field. So now what we want to do, we want to add a to do to our to do list. So for that, what we can do, we can go back here inside this handle submit function here. We can create a new to do here. So we can say const to do equal to an object here, which takes an ID here, and I'll tell you how to provide an ID here, and then the body of the to do. So the body would be something, and the body would be this content thing here like this. And now to provide this ID, what I'm going to use, I'm going to use another package that is called nano ID. So npm I nano ID. So now this dependency has been installed. So let me start the application again, and let me use that nano ID dependency. So now to generate ID here randomly, what I can do, I can simply import nano ID from nano ID like this. And now to create a random ID, what I can do, I can simply do nano ID like this, and then we simply call that nano ID thing here. So now if we log this to do here inside the console, so console.log to do like this. So let me save this and let's go back. And nano ID doesn't contain the default export. So what we need to do, we need to import by using destructuring here, and now this should work. And yes, it works. So now if we simply add a to do here, we see that we are getting this thing here. That is an individual to do. So here, instead of logging it here, let me also remove this thing from here. Here what we can do, we can simply call that function, that is add to do, and here we can pass in the individual to do like this. So let's save this, and if we go back and if we try to add this to do, we see that the to do has been added to here like this. So we can add the to dos, but what we want here, that is after adding the to do, I want to clear out this input field. So for that, what we can do, after adding the to do, we can simply say set content to be an empty string like this. So as soon as we add this to do, we see that our input field is empty here. So let me clear out some to dos here. And now if I try to add the to do here, we see that we are able to add empty to do. So for that, what we can do, we can simply make a toast here. That is, we cannot add empty to dos, as we can see in the completed application. So if we try to add a to do, we see that we are getting this toast here. So that's what we are going to use. We are going to use a toast here to display or to notify the user that you cannot add empty to dos. So for that, what I need to have here, we need to import use toast from Chakra UI. So use toast like this. And where this use toast comes from, it again comes from this Chakra UI thing. So if we scroll down, we see that in the feedback, we have this toast component here. And to use this toast component, we simply need to import this use toast from Chakra UI. So we can go back, we imported use toast here, and here at the top of this component, what we can say const toast equal to use toast. So it's a hook inside Chakra UI to create toast. And now when do we want to show the toast? We can say if content, that is if there is no content, so we can provide a not here. If there is not content, then we can display the toast here. So we can say toast, and then let me simply copy this toast thing from here. That is whatever is inside this toast here. So let me copy it and let me paste it here. That is the title, the description, the status, the duration, and is closable. So we do not want any description here. We only want the title here, that is no content, simply like this. And then the status of the to do. So we can provide a different status here. So either we can provide an error message here, info, success, or warning. So let me provide it as an error here. And then the duration of the toast. So let me keep it 2 seconds for now, just to demo you how to use toast here and whether it's closable or not. So let it be closable so that we can get a checkbox to close the toast. And then finally, after displaying the toast, we can return from this handle submit function, and we do not proceed to create on this to do here, and then this add to do call here. So let's save this. So let's go back. Let's go to our application. So if we click here, we see that we are not able to add the to do. And after 2 seconds, this toast would disappear. And if we click here, we can just make this toast disappear. And now let me clear out this empty to dos. So we see that our application is almost complete, but we haven't used local storage as of yet. Because if I close this application and if I start my application again, that is localhost port 4000, because our app runs on port 4000, and this comes from our initial state. So if we go back to our application, we see that the initial to-dos are these to-dos. So now let's use local storage inside our application. So where we are using this use state, we need to get the to-dos from our local storage. So what we can say local storage dot get item, and here we need to provide in the key. So here you can provide in any key, but that should be static key. And now since this get item would return us as a string, so what we need to do, we need to convert it into an array. So we can use json.parse. So we can say json.parse like this. And here we can wrap this local storage thing inside json.parse. But if we go to our application, we would be getting an error here, and that is true. And that is because this key, that is this to-dos key, doesn't exist inside our local storage. So if we right click here and if we click inspect here, And if we go to the application thing here, and if we have a look at this local storage for this localhost port 4000, we see there is no key value present here. So now what we can do, instead of returning here that is only json.parse local storage, we can check for the null value. So we can pass here an OR thing here, that is if this is null, then pass return an empty array. So if we save this, now this should work. So we see that we are getting no to-dos. And now if we want to add to-dos, we are able to add to-dos, but they are not persisted inside local storage. As you can see, there is no key value pair created. But before looking into that, let me show you one more thing. That is currently inside this use state thing, that is to get the to-dos or to get the initial state of the to-dos, we are unnecessarily calling this local storage.get item thing on each and every render. Because if you do not provide in a function here, then this call would be called on each and every render, but that is an unnecessary call because initial state is used only on the first render. So instead of directly providing this thing here like this, what we can do, we can simply use a function here. So we can say like this, that is use state like this, and here we can provide in that json.parse thing here, or json.parse local storage.get item. And now if we save this, nothing would change. We would have the same thing here. Nothing would change visually, but it would make your application super fast because we are only using this local storage.get item only on the initial render and not on subsequent renders when the to-dos changes. And now we can see that we are able to add the to-dos to this to-do list, but they are not persisted here in this key value thing. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use another hook here, and that is the use effect hook, which would be fired whenever this to-dos state variable changes. So I can say use effect here like this, and this should fire only when the to-dos changes like this. And here inside this function, what we need to do, we need to set the item to this to-dos key. So we can say local storage.set item, and here we need to provide in the key is to-dos, and here we can need to provide in to-dos. But this is wrong. We need to convert this to-dos into a string. So we can use json.stringify, and here we need to provide in to-dos. So if we save this, if we go back, if we add a to-do, we see that the to-do is added here, and if we add another to-do, that to-do is added here. And if we delete this to-do, we only have one to-do. Let me add one more to-do. So let me close this window here, and now let me open the window again, that is on localhost port 4000, and let's see that if the to-dos persisted here. And we see that the to-dos are persisted here. So that makes our application complete. But wait a minute, one part remains, and that part is this part, that is making our application dark mode compatible. If we have a look here, we see that the application is dark mode compatible. So now let's do that. So for that, let's go to our application here, and to enable dark mode inside Chakra UI, it is a two-step process and it is super simple to do. Firstly, we need to go to our index.js where we are using this Chakra provider, and here we need to import one more thing, and that is color mode script. So this one, and here we need to pass that color mode script as a component before our app component. So we can say color mode script like this, and here we need to provide in one prop, and that is the initial color mode. And this can take in some values, that is the dark always, light, system, depending on whether the color mode on system is dark or light. So it is based upon that, but here I'm simply keeping it light. So now let's save this, and if we go back, we cannot do anything with this thing here. So to use this color mode, what we need to do, we need to go to our app.js, because our app.js contains this button which toggles the color mode. So to use the color mode here, what we need to do, we need to import one more hook from Chakra UI, and that is use color mode like this. And now we can use this color mode. So we can use this color mode here. So we can say const something equal to use color mode, simply like this, and this returns us two things, that is the color mode and then toggle color mode, which would simply toggle the color mode. And now what we want to have here, whenever someone clicks on this icon button, we simply want to call this function here, that is toggle color mode. So we can say on click, and I would be coming to this color mode in a moment, but firstly let's see that is on click, on this icon button click, I simply want to call this function here, that is toggle color mode. So if we save this, so let's see if we are able to toggle the color mode. So this is our application, and if we click on this icon button here, So we see that we are able to toggle the color mode to dark. And now the last part remains is that how to change the icon of the sun to moon. So that is again super simple to do. So we have this thing, this color mode from this use color mode thing here. So what we can do, we can display the icon depending on the color mode. And this color mode would contain this thing here, that is color mode should be equal to light. So if the color mode is light, then we want to display the far sun. Otherwise, what we can display, we can simply display far moon like this. So let's save this and let's go back. Let's reload the application. We see that this moon is displayed here. If we click here, this sun is displayed here. So this is as easy as this thing here, that is to include dark mode inside your application. So if still you are not able to toggle dark mode like this, then what more you can do, you can go back to your index.js file, and here you need to do a couple of things more in case that is needed if you're not able to toggle dark mode. So firstly, what you need to do, you need to create a config file here, and this is only necessary in case the dark mode is not working. And here you need to provide an initial color mode, and this should be light or dark or system, whatever it is, but only one of those three values. And then you need to have use system color mode to be false, simply like this. And then you need to include a couple of more things here. Firstly, we need to include this extend theme from Chakra UI that was included automatically here. And then you need to create a theme from this extend theme thing here. So we can say const theme equal to extend the theme like this. And here we can provide in an object here inside this extend theme function. And here we can simply provide in this config here. So we can provide in config like this. And now let's save this. And instead of providing a color mode like this, that is instead of providing it like this, we can say theme.config.initial color mode like this. Though it is the same thing as providing in light here because this is also light, but you can provide in dark also. So if we save this, now your application should be dark mode compatible 100%. I'm sure about that. And this you only need to do in case the previous thing was not working for you. So let's go back and let's reload the application. So we see that we have a dark mode compatible application without doing much here. So guys, this is all about this application. So if you have liked the application, do hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. So thank you. Bye bye. Tata. Take care and have a good day and have a great day.